Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's the session you've all been waiting for, the NSF Office of the Inspector General. You may have heard about us.
Oh, thanks for the claps.
So, just to briefly reintroduce myself, I was here on Monday morning and I introduced myself to some, I would say, apprehensive laughter. But just to reintroduce myself to anyone who wasn't here, my name is Philip Emswiler. I'm an audit manager in the Office of Audits at NSF OIG.
And I'm Lauren Stinger. I was not here because I'm actually on my maternity leave. I have a newborn at home. And to speak highly of my coworkers, I love them so much, I volunteered to take an adult day off and not talk about diapers for a day. So this is great to be here. I love this office. I've been practicing law for 10 years. I'm an investigative attorney with NSF. I've only been here a few months, but I've worked at other IG offices and state prosecutors' offices and for the state ethics office, disbarring attorneys, which was a really cool job. So take it off, Phil.
Some more of that apprehensive laughter right
there. I swear, we're nice people.
So to get launched into it, what is an Office of Inspector General? The first two bullets on this first slide lay out our mission statement. This is what we're trying to do through our audits, through our investigations, through everything that we do, which is to promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in NSF's operations. We're also looking to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse. So that's our mission statement, our top line. Everything we do is aimed at that goal. As an OIG, we have full access to records and subpoena power. You have to cooperate with us. And our office of, our Inspector General, we report to Congress and to the head of to the National Science Board, the agency head. To illustrate what an OIG is, though, and since we're here in Philadelphia and I love history, I'm going to tell you a little story about the first Inspector General. It wasn't technically the first, but it's pretty darn close. And because we're in Philadelphia, and this story takes place not too far from here, out in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And it's February of 1778. Now, in February of 1778, the British are occupying Philadelphia, and things are not going too well for the Patriot Army. Out in Valley Forge, they're low on supplies. Morale is low. They've lost the battles around Philadelphia. And it's a brutal winter. And into George Washington's headquarters is going to come a volunteer. He's from Germany. His name is Frederick Wilhelm August Heinrich Ferdinand von Steuben. And I wrote that down because I wasn't going to remember it all. But he walks into Washington's headquarters and says, "I'm here to volunteer." Now, von Steuben has a lot of military experience back in Europe, and he's got a letter of recommendation from Benjamin Franklin, which is a pretty good letter of recommendation to have in your pocket. And Washington's going to talk to him, and he's going to be impressed. And he's going to say to von Steuben, "I want you to be my Inspector General." And he appoints von Steuben as the Inspector General of the Army. And I hasten to add, all available evidence is that Washington was fully sane, in command of his faculty at the time that he did this. He said, "I want an Inspector General." And he's going to appoint von Steuben acting Inspector General because he has to be confirmed by Congress, which he will be. But after he gets his appointment, von Steuben's going to launch right into his job. He's going to be going through that camp, talking to everybody. He's going to be interviewing the officers. He's going to be interviewing the men. He's inspecting their huts. He's inspecting their tents. He's conducting inventories. If any of you have been audited before, this may sound familiar. And after he's done, he's going to come up with a report and several recommendations and findings and recommendations. You might be familiar with those terms as well. That's what we still do as IGs. We come up with findings and recommendations as auditors. And I'm not going to share all of his recommendations, but two of them that really illustrate what IGs try to do. The first finding that von Steuben has is that the Army just sets up its tents, or its camps completely haphazardly. There's no structure, no system to it at all. And von Steuben's first recommendation for that finding is going to be, we need to have a system for this. And he's going to have some specific suggestions for what they should do. They should have the tents where the men are going to sleep in the middle. They should have the kitchen on one side and a latrine on the other side, preferably downhill. So the food's going to come in one end and go out the other. And this is going to hopefully help get rid of disease because they were having a big problem with disease. So he's going to suggest that they recommend that they have a systematic way of setting up the camp. The second recommendation that I want to share with you is that von Steuben finds that the Army doesn't have any record keeping. There's no bookkeeping going on. They are purchasing supplies, they're spending this money that Congress has given to them, and there's not a good system of keeping track of all of it. So von Steuben's going to say, I think we need to have something like that. We need to keep track of this money, how it's being spent, and what it's being spent on. And George Washington is going to implement those recommendations. And as an auditor, that is my favorite word, implemented. You know, that is what we want. We want our recommendations to be implemented and to be acted upon. So von Steuben does that, and what are the results? And I'll wrap up this story with what are the results of it? What does von Steuben not do? What does he do? And what are the results? The first thing he doesn't do is he's not usurping George Washington. George Washington's still the head of the agency. He's the commander-in-chief of the Army. It's his job to win the war and figure out how to secure American independence. What is he doing as Inspector General? He is making recommendations to improve the economy, effectiveness, and efficiency of the Army and to detect fraud, waste, and abuse. You can't do that if you don't have any records. So doing those things to improve how the agency, the Army, is going to operate. And what is the effectiveness? When George Washington, as commander-in-chief, chooses to fight the Army, he's going to have more healthy soldiers, and they're going to be better equipped. The resources that they have are going to go to waste. And the other thing, and then I'll launch into what NSF OIG does, is it builds trust. Washington and Congress know if von Steuben comes in with a recommendation, it's based on solid facts, he's going to give them the right recommendation. And from 1778 to today, that is what OIGs are trying to do. And we at NSF OIG are certainly no exception. We want to get it right. We want to make the right recommendation that's going to promote efficiency, effectiveness, and economy in all of NSF's operations. So what do we do in 2024 as NSF OIG? Well, there are two main branches. One is the Office of Investigations, which Lauren is going to address here in a bit. We conduct outreach, which is what we're doing here. We want to come out and talk to folks like y'all to tell you who we are and how we do things. So hopefully, there's no apprehensive laughter when we talk about the OIG. There's really no need for that, and we don't want that. And then the other component is the Office of Audits, and that's where I live. And there are three main flavors of audits. The first is an internal audit, which we will conduct of an NSF program or operation. That really won't affect most of you in the room because that's an audit that we conduct within NSF. So we're going to be reaching out to NSF staff, to NSF offices to conduct that audit. The second one, which I'll spend most of this presentation talking about and which will primarily impact you, are external audits. And these are the audits where we do go out to institutions and we audit there to find out what's going on within an institution that has received NSF award funding. And the third type, and the one that I primarily do, are called hybrid audits. These tend to be bigger bodies of audit work where we are interested in a NSF program. And it's going to combine, as the name hybrid implies, some internal audit work where we're looking at NSF and how NSF is managing the program. But then we're also going to go out to some of the institutions that are part of that program. Because if we're going to assess this program, how can we do it unless we go out to the institutions that are part of it, that have received awards under this program, to determine how this is actually working out in the field? So those are the three main flavors of the audit work that we do. As I said, I'm going to be focusing going forward here on the external audits because that's what's going to be most applicable to everyone in this room and online. So how do we pick audits? We have an audit plan every year, and we update it every year. Some audits are required, and you can see some of them there in the orange box. These are mandated audits. Congress has passed a law, the president has signed it, and it has said, you will do these audits every year. Sometimes it specifies a date by which this audit work is going to be done. That's non-negotiable. Those audits will get done every single year by the deadline specified in the legislation. Other audits are discretionary, and we're going to look at a variety of factors: congressional requests, single audit results, prior audit work that we've done. One of our auditors seen something that looks like this would be worth some of our audit time to go in and investigate. These get done because they're discretionary. The mandatory ones have to get done first, but discretionary ones will get added along the way. And I'll go into more of how we pick some of these audits and what risk factors we look at as we go through the next few slides here. What kind of audits might you be involved with? These all fall, well, not all of the ones in the yellow boxes are the external audits, and that's where I'm going to spend most of my time. But just very briefly, over on the left hand of the slide are the performance audits, which I classify most of those would fall within the hybrid category with their internal component and an external component, or they're an internal NSF audit, and then our financial and IT audits. Now, the external audits fall into a few classifications. The first one there is the external incurred cost audits. These audits are going to be at an institution. We do generally 20 to 24 a year. They're usually conducted, not always, but usually conducted by an independent public accounting firm that is contracted with NSF OIG. These audits are going to look at not just a single award, but they're going to look at all awards, all NSF awards made to the institution in a given scope period. So it's going to look at all of the incurred cost audits on the NSF awards within that particular, within that scope period. It's going to look at things like financial systems, cost and accounting systems, drawdown patterns. The final audit report for those will go to the institution as well as to NSF. The second category you'll see there are the single audits. As many of you probably know, if you're at an institution which receives more than, or spends more than $750,000 in federal money in a particular year, in a single year, you have to have a single audit done. And at NSF OIG, if NSF is your cognizant agency, and typically that means NSF gives you most of your money. So if NSF is your cognizant agency, we will do a desk review of the single audit that you've had done. And we'll be looking at things to ensure that that is reliable, that it's covered all the required components, and it's something that can be relied upon for oversight both by NSF, by us, and by other federal agencies that give funding to that institution. The external audit risk models, and this is the incurred cost audits again. How do we pick the ones that we do? The first thing we do is obtain the universe of NSF awards. We want to know what we're picking from. How many NSF awards are there? How big are they? What institutions are they going to? That's defining the population. And then we're going to look at risk factors. So is there anything in the drawdown pattern of an award that makes it look like it's worth taking a look at? How many awards does an institution have? How big are those awards? And then are there any single audit findings for that institution? Those are the three factors: single audit findings, number and size of NSF awards. We'll also look at external awards as well. And then anything about the drawdown pattern. That's the main factors that are going to drive how we select the external audit, the incurred cost audits that we're going to do. And then diving more in depth into the single audits and quality assurance. Single audits and quality assurance are related, but quality assurance review is going to be more in depth. Single audit, again, as I said, if NSF is the cognizant agency for your institution, we're going to do a desk review of that. And the desk review is going to look at a few things, or two primary things. One is, was everything that was done, that was required to be done on the audit done? And there's a checklist for that. We know, we go through and check down all the elements. Were all of those done and completed? The second thing that we're going to look at in a desk review is I'll come back to that when I
You do the next slide.
Yeah, no. That's more to do on the QCR here. With the QCR, that's going to be more in depth. There's 2 to 3 of those that we try to do every year. Those are going to be more in depth, and they're going to seem potentially like they're an audit of you. What we're not doing there, though, is auditing the audit, basically. We're going in to do a deep dive on that audit to say, was everything that was supposed to be done on that audit done? And we may come to you as the institution and request some of the audit work papers or some of the primary documentation that was done. How do we select the institutions that we're going to do a quality control review on? We're going to look at, this is looking at the institution or the auditing firm that did the audit. How many audits, single audits do they do? What's the volume of single audit work that they do? Has there been any change in their portfolio recently? Has their number of high-risk institutions increased recently, or has it gone down? What is NSF's exposure of the portfolio of single audits that this firm does? How many NSF awards are covered by it? How big are those NSF awards? And then also you'll see on there, GAQC member. That's something, it's the AICPA Government Audit Quality Center. And that's something where if the firm is a member of that, that gives us some assurance that they're following some high-level professional auditing standards. That gives us some assurance that perhaps their quality of their audit work is a bit more, not certain, but we've got a little more high level of trust in that. So this is the audit process, and it's called the audit communication process, and the word there in the middle is really the key word that I want to draw your attention to, because communication is really the central element of our audit process. Each one of those boxes is geared towards ensuring that there's constant communication between us as the IG and you as the auditee throughout the audit process. Step number one is the engagement letter. That's the notice that we're going to do an audit. Step number two is the entrance conference. That is where you're going to sit down with the audit team, the representatives of your institution, generally anyone who's going to be impacted by it, by the audit work that we're planning to do, sit down and discuss the steps, have an initial document request, maybe a few additional initial interviews to launch the audit. The meat and potatoes of the audit is the field work and discussion phase. This is where you'll probably get a lot of communication from the audit team, asking questions, requesting documents. You'll probably have a lot of back and forth there as the audit team is trying to get to grips with the program, with your institution, with your policies and procedures to make sure that we understand everything that's going on and that we're getting it right. Again, accuracy is a driving factor behind what we do. Now, step 4 is where we've gotten to the end, as the name exit conference implies. We think, or actually I skipped field work and discussion draft. That's where the audit teams finish the field work and we think we know what we found. We think we've got our findings, we think we've got our recommendations. We're gonna come up with a discussion draft. Generally that's a framework of the audit report. But we're gonna share that with the auditee, which with you as the institution, with NSF, it's an audit of them, and it's gonna say, this is what we think we found. These are our findings, these are our recommendations. Did we miss anything? Are we wrong about something? Is there additional evidence that we should have gotten or should have considered that we didn't consider? Are our recommendations feasible and workable? If they're not feasible and workable, they're no good to us and they're no good to you. So we're gonna have that discussion at the discussion draft phase. There's no guarantee that we're gonna change anything in the discussion draft based on those discussions, but we want to have those discussions because again, we want to get it right. We want our recommendations to be something that you can implement, something that will make your organization, your operations better. Then the exit conference is going to be a revisiting of that. That's as we're moving towards having a final official draft. We're going to have an exit conference and say, again, reiterate what we found and what we're recommending. That's going to lead to the official draft report. That is, as compared to the discussion draft, that's the full thing. The audit team has sat down and drafted out an audit report. It's going to have all of our findings, all of our supporting evidence, and all of our recommendations. This is something that is not going outside. This is shared between the audit team and the institution, or between the audit team and the auditee. And you will have a chance, as it says there on the slide, to comment on that, a full written response. And that is going to be included in the final audit report verbatim. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is all stuff that's taking place between you and the audit team. This is not going outside. The final step there, when it goes outside, is the final audit report. And that is going to get posted online. That is publicly available. It will be redacted as necessary. And again, it will include your full written response as an appendix to the final audit report that goes out, that is seen publicly. But there's never going to be an instance where you're going to be audited. You're going to get a memo saying, we're going to come and audit you as NSF OIG, and you're going to turn around one day and there's an audit report out there about your institution. That will not happen. promising practices. We do a lot of audits, and we've put out a promising practices report because, believe it or not, some things seem to recur throughout the auditee community. And there are some promising practices and recurring findings that we want to draw your attention to. We put this together in January of 2022 based on 18 audit reports. And I'll just read through these because they really do come up, and I think, I'd commend the entire report to you, but these are the 5 we want to highlight here today. To continually monitor and verify the allowability of high-risk expenses, to strengthen controls over applying indirect cost rates, ensure award recipients create and maintain sufficient appropriate award documentation, document and justify reasonable allocation methodologies, and regularly review and update grant management policies and procedures. Again, these are things that have come up across multiple audits. So take a look at those. Take a look at the entire report again, but these are things that come up consistently. And so we want to draw the community's attention to those. And the last slide on the audit process is our semi-annual report. The semi-annual report is a compendium of sorts that we issue twice a year on our recent audit work. So it's bringing attention to our most recent audit findings and recommendations in a condensed fashion. They are issued twice a year, as I said, one at the end of May, one at the end of November. And we are at June 4th, 2024. A new SAR was just issued last week on May 31st. It is there on our website for you to go and take a look at. Just like the Best and Promising Practices report, I highly recommend that to everyone here because it's a way to see what has NSF OIG been doing, what are the findings and recommendations from our most recent audit work. You can read that and you can apply it at your institution before we even get to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, I believe,
Yes.
to Lauren.
All right. So our Office of Investigations, I swear we are not scary at all. Our role is to function really as a fact finder. We do not make the decision to prosecute criminally or civilly, or we also don't take the direct administrative action. Instead, we'll present our information to the Department of Justice or the U.S. Attorney's offices to refer criminal or civil referrals. And then we also present to NSF for administrative matters where they determine, so NSF itself, because we're obviously separate, they determine the action to take. Administrative matters will include investigations such as employee misconduct, discrimination, or research misconduct investigations. In any civil, criminal, or administrative matter, some of those cases are referred to us based on whistleblower complaints or referrals, which we'll get to that in a second. The difference, of course, I'm sure a lot of you know, between the criminal and civil matters that we will refer. In the criminal cases, obviously, people or institutions are subject to criminal penalties. That could include jail or prison time. That burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. However, in civil cases, it's a preponderance of the evidence, which is really 51% or up. And you have to convince the jury, preponderance, not just beyond a reasonable doubt. There's different burdens of proof, and there's different burdens of consequences for criminal and civil referrals. In administrative cases, we'll write reports recommending that NSF take some sort of action. These reports are really lengthy. Sometimes, we're an investigations team filled with attorneys, so 25 pages is probably brief for us. Sorry, attorney joke. So we'll issue a whole report. It's filled with all of the facts from all sides presented that we've reviewed and found from interviews, witnesses, documents, subpoena documents, search warrants, anything that was involved in the investigation. And then NSF will either accept or implement our recommendation. In any investigation, the underlying allegation has to have an NSF nexus. So typically, NSF funds for research are involved. The grantees or contractors for NSF funds, they're subcontractors or their subordinates. It's essentially NSF money all throughout down the chain that we'll investigate. All right. So the types of allegations that we will investigate include a variety, but on this slide is essentially what we investigate the most. Most of the cases we work with are white-collar crimes, such as the one listed on this slide. Anything that's involved in the United States Code or the Code of Federal Regulations is fair game for us for referrals. A lot of our cases will involve conflicts of interest, so that's intended to protect the integrity of the merit review process for NSF, ensure that the award process is fair, unbiased, and money goes to the best projects. Conflicts of interest includes bribes, kickbacks in return for selecting an awardee or a sub-awardee. Duplicative funding, getting grants from different agencies to do the same research. We actually see this a lot. The failure to fully disclose other funding in your current and pending support section of your application. So if you're getting the same money to do the same work from NASA and you're not disclosing it to us, that's essentially a falsification charge that we could investigate. Abuse of government funds, so spending the money on personal items, activities such as trips, cars, credit cards, groceries, instead of what the government funds were allocated for. You would be surprised what we find and what people spend money on. And actually, it's trackable. You use your credit card, we're going to find out. Research misconduct. Also, a lot of our cases involving research misconduct are involved in the Code of Federal Regulations. If anyone's interested in the statute or regulatory citation, it's 45 CFR, Part 689. All right, the sources of our allegations for investigations come from a variety of people. They're all listed here without just listing them off. They come from essentially anyone working with NSF funds. So anyone working with NSF funds can contact us. You can go to our website and click on report fraud, waste, or abuse, and essentially just report it right to us directly. Perfect timing. So our process. So we initially receive an allegation from any source whatsoever. We first review the allegation to determine if there's an NSF link. Sometimes we get allegations and we choose to not investigate it at all because there's no NSF jurisdiction. There's no NSF link to establish jurisdiction for us to even investigate in the first place. But if there is, our primary job is fact-finding. We do that by reviewing records. We'll interview the person if they haven't submitted it anonymously about the complaint. We'll interview people, witnesses, scientists, experts. We will issue subpoenas. Sometimes we execute search warrants in criminal matters. I forgot to mention our office is comprised of special agents who have the ability to execute search warrants for criminal investigations. It includes me and my other fellow attorneys for investigative attorney staff. And we also have expert subject matter experts who are PhD scientists that will also work with us as well, that help us, the attorneys, figure out what the heck we're even looking at. We can refer matters to the audits office within our office or to another agency if their funds are involved and we believe that an audit should take place. In the case of research misconduct, we typically refer the investigations to the university involved as they're obligated to take our recommendation and investigate research misconduct themselves. For use of indirect funds, we can refer civil and criminal matters to the U.S. Attorney's Office. In that case, they're going to do the prosecution or the plea agreement or the civil agreement, but we often work with them in conjunction. For administrative investigations, we'll draft a report and refer the matter to NSF. And then with all of these, our goal is to protect the interests of the government and the U.S. taxpayer. All right, administrative cases. A lot of them primarily are research misconduct cases. They're governed by NSF's regulation, which defines research misconduct as fabrication, falsification, and/or plagiarism. That requires a finding of there has to be a significant departure from accepted practices of the research community, and the research misconduct has to be intentional, knowing, or reckless. So it can't be honest error or negligent. And then the allegation has to be proven by a preponderance of the evidence. And then plagiarism is defined, primarily speaking, as the appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving appropriate credit. The variety of consequences for research misconduct is a giant realm of possibilities. They could be implemented on an individual or an institution, and it includes letters of reprimand, requirement for the institution or individual to obtain prior approval before doing anything, requirements for certification for accuracy of their reports, total or partial suspension of an award, special review of funding, corrections to research records, prohibition of certain individuals from participating in certain actions, or suspension or debarment. And those are the two scary words, I think, to most people for participating in federal programs or grants, and that could be for a set period of time. All right. I have a couple of case studies to go through, and I really want to get to them, so I'm going to breeze through like the next two slides. So these are our most frequently violated criminal and civil statutes. A lot of them are interesting. Some of them may or may not be interested to anyone here in the audience. A lot of them involve False Claims Act, so certifying something was true when it was not true or did not take place. It's essentially all about money, damages, and recovery. Remember, for civil damages, there can be treble damages involved in a lot of these cases, meaning that, let's say you use $100,000 falsely, and that's through the False Claims Act, you can be liable to pay 3 times that amount back to NSF. Wire and mail fraud, too, is a large amount of the criminal and civil investigation statutes involved. Okay, I want to get to the interesting stuff. Investigative outcomes, like I said, we can refer to the Department of Justice, we can refer to NSF, or we can refer for an audit. Sorry if I'm breezing through this and anyone has any questions, please interrupt me. Whistleblower protection. A lot of our cases can also come from a whistleblower. So the Whistleblower Protection Act is a right for federal employees and their subcontractors, contractors, grantees, and subgrantees, and it protects from retaliation for making a protected disclosure. Federal law prohibits retaliation for providing information reasonably believed to provide evidence of a violation of law, rule, or regulation, gross mismanagement, gross waste of funds, abuse of authority, or substantial and specific danger to public health and safety. The violation of law, rule, or regulation can include any civil, criminal, or administrative action or personnel offenses. NSF contractors and grantees are protected if they make disclosures to their management, so your supervisors, to OIG, us directly, or Congress. You can find all of this information on our website. It's actually very interesting stuff. Everything is on there about the legal aspect and how to report. And if you believe you've been subject to retaliation for protected whistleblowing, you can report to us or the U.S. Office of Special Counsel. Okay. And the next slide, if anyone ever has to come back to the slides, is who you can contact within our office about whistleblower complaints. He can't give you legal information, but he could give you some information about prohibitions against retaliation for protected disclosures and your rights and remedies. Okay, I'm going to go to what I think is the most interesting case study, which is 2, 3, and 5. Let's see if I can get through them. Case study number 2. So here, the university had a pattern and practice of paying students to perform unrelated PhD-required teaching assistant duties. And they were charging the expenses to the research grants and not their own funds. Because the teaching assistant duties were unallocable. Did I pronounce that right? Okay. Unallocable. They were not allowed under the grant requirements. So according to information provided to us by the university, a teaching assistant fund was then put in place to the university to correct this problem. The case was brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was accepted for civil prosecution, and a settlement was reached for $3.75 million to resolve the allegations. And this is one of our False Claims Act cases that we had. See, this is more interesting. Promise. Case study number 3, another more interesting one. This is a former professor who was convicted of grant fraud. He was found guilty of conspiracy, false statements for 3 counts, and obstruction by falsification. He was sentenced to time served, which was 3 months. He was held in pretrial jail. He was judged a flight risk. I'm saying he, it could be he or she, just generally speaking. He was put on house arrest until trial, and then 2 years supervised release for criminal penalties. Here's the facts. The PI had undisclosed foreign funding in U.S. grant applications and submissions to the university. The PI made disclosures at the university regarding travel and conferences, but more could have been done, and we found red flags there. The university had disallowed activities and told him he couldn't do things, but he did it anyway. And there was a pattern of this person for putting in for conflicts of interest that were not allowed. On a side note, the university conducted its own investigation, and they found that 2 grad students on an NSF award were actually in a different country. They made incriminating statements at the interview that helped at trial, and they were ultimately fired as a result of their own investigation. The evidence presented at trial for the professor and the PI. So while he was a professor, the PI founded and served as an officer for a company that was funded through federal grants. However, he held an outside position at a Chinese institution, which presented a conflict of interest. He caused the company to submit fraudulent grant proposals to NSF for research he knew was already completed in China. When subpoenaed for records, he also then provided falsified records to OIG. So a lot of our investigations, it's insane what we will find. During the investigations, people will try to then cover up certain things to either us or to Congress or through audits, and we will find out. It's the long and short of it, right? I'll go, we only have 8 minutes before questions, so I'll go to case study number 5. Okay, so case study number 5, this was a research misconduct case. So like I said, we investigate a variety of different things. Research misconduct, also very interesting to work with. In this case, an NSF-supported graduate student was found to have falsified data, plagiarized another researcher's dissertation, and committed ethical violations in a manuscript, which 2 journals had published. This person submitted manuscripts without co-authors' knowledge or consent, submitted manuscripts to 7 journals simultaneously, falsified a journal submission page, and used a false email address for co-authors. I don't know how this person had that much time on their hands. I've gone through the peer review process, and I can only submit to 1 journal at a time, let alone 7. The students blamed a hostile work environment, improper supervision, lack of training, canceled meetings, advisors' lack of interest, but they never took responsibility for their actions. They felt that they deserved a publication after synthesizing compounds for the advisor. So the university conducted an accurate and thorough investigation and concluded that there was falsification and plagiarism. The student was dismissed, the publications were retracted. The university required better student training afterwards. It was a nice outcome that we really like to see implemented, that a university said, you know, we messed up, we're gonna do something about it. The NSF requirements for responsible and ethical conduct of research training was expanded to include NSF-funded faculty. Previously, it was just required for NSF-funded students. So that was another great outcome for this case. The OIG recommended a 3-year debarment and 6-year certification and assurance that NSF ultimately agreed to in this case. So that was a great outcome that we had. So like Phil was saying, we often, as much as people are possibly afraid of us, I swear we are nice people, but we do come to the same conclusions. They're often implemented by NSF. They often work with us and agree with us and will make changes and implement the changes that either we recommend or they recommend themselves. Same goes for universities. Ultimately, universities will accept our recommendations and implement changes as well. Do we have time for case number 6? I think I'll do case study number 6. So this case, for case 6, involved not only research misconduct in the form of plagiarism, but merit review violations as well. A reviewer copied materials from an NSF grant proposal. He reviewed it and put it in his own NSF proposal that he submitted as a PI. As with the other case and our policy that involved the subject's institution in the process, the PI acknowledged copying the material into his proposal, and the university required the PI submit plagiarism reports for proposals and papers for 3 years, and then they required that person to complete training. Government interests were protected here by a 2-year debarment of the PI and 5 years of certifications and assurances. Additionally, the PI was prohibited from serving as an NSF reviewer, advisor, consultant, or rotator. NSF's Office of the Director accepted our recommendations and made a research misconduct finding. NSF also returned a pending proposal without review due to the research misconduct finding. I will go to best practices because I don't want to run out of time here. So to conclude, if you have questions related to compliance with grant terms, allowable costs, auditing questions, please ask your NSF program officer and get their advice in writing. That's the legal thing that I can say, and follow it. The best way to prevent an OIG investigation or consequence is to be knowledgeable about how to handle your grant funds, which is why you're all here today, by taking the required training seriously and by documenting your work and asking your NSF program officer. Every NSF program officer I've ever talked to has been one of the nicest people I've ever met. So they've always been very helpful and are willing to ask questions. I guess I will turn it over to you, Phil.
So yeah, the last slide is to keep in touch. And I'm also going to take a little point of personal privilege here and go back to single audits where my brain failed me briefly. And just say the single audit, the purpose of the single audit is we are reviewing whether it's it is compliant with federal standards, federal requirements, and federal regulations, and professional audit standards. And after we've completed the desk review, we're going to send a copy of that to the auditee, the institution that was audited, to the auditor, the audit firm that did the work, and also to any federal agencies that are giving direct funding to that institution that was the subject of the single audit. So that was where my brain failed me there briefly. I like lists, and sometimes that's a bad thing. But keep in touch. This is our information, our contact information. We have a whistleblower hotline that you see down there. You are able to submit anonymously through our hotline. If you choose to submit anonymously, this is always the caveat. Please provide as much information as you possibly can because we won't be able to reach back out to you to follow up on that.
Please.
We've got a question in the back.
Yes, a question from online. Can you
cool.
please explain how NSF reports findings of research misconduct?
I think what they're asking is how they report it. We will have reports filed. They're filed online essentially. So they will do their own investigation. They're required. Universities are required to do their own investigations, and so is NSF. We will essentially kind of review it like an audit and make sure that it's done correctly. We do have cases, the Office of Investigation will find that universities are not doing their investigations as required, and then we investigate the investigation or the failure to investigate, if that makes sense. But everything's essentially published online, redacted, of course. Another question.
One last question.
Yeah.
Are you all the team involved in grants who have not met program goals or benchmarks over multiple years? Are you all the ones? If not, who would be the contact?
For that, it doesn't sound like that would be an investigations thing because there's not necessarily any criminal misconduct. I mean, the question is just who to contact?
Yes, if not you all, do you know who they would contact?
I think you certainly could contact the IG.
To start there
Yeah.
and then maybe redirect.
I mean,
Okay.
not everything has to be an investigation. In fact, it's better when it's not an investigation.
Exactly, yes. Thank
We
you.
have enough work to do.
Yeah. So any of the information on this screen here, I would refer the questioner to.
You mentioned that one of the red flags was the drawdown rate for a grant?
Not necessarily drawdown, anything about how the funds are being drawn down that would cause us to have some uneasiness about it. Is it coming out all at once? Is it coming out in big chunks? Is it coming out? I mean, is there anything that makes us think, we want to take a look at this? And there's really no set thing that I would tell you is, don't do this or we're going to be suspicious of you. It's just generally we're going to look at, does this look like a regular drawdown of an award?
I have another question. I've always wondered if I am a faculty member using NSF money and I'm paying myself over the summer, and that's all been, in the budget and everything, but I do the work during the academic year. Is that any kind of ethical
That's not a
issue?
problem. No.
Yeah.
We used to say summer months. We don't say summer months anymore. It's up to your institution to determine what that year period is, whether it's an annual year, fiscal year, academic year.
And I know we're out of time, so I'll be very brief, but the only thing I would add to that is to just document everything that you do. I mean, as an auditor, the most frustrating thing is to go in and you tell me you've done something, but then there's no documentation to support what you did. It's much better, even if you've done something wrong, if you've got it documented and I can track the funds, that's much better than having no documentation at all. So document, document, document.
Thank you.
Thank you.